Appreciate all the comments that have been made on both sides of the aisle. Let's try to get some facts straight. One, I do agree, and I take everybody at their word, that there's not a member of this dais that approves of a zero-tolerance policy. I also think we have to acknowledge the fact that the zero-tolerance policy came from somewhere, and that the Trump administration initially denied that there was a policy, finally conceded there was a policy, and members of the White House indicated that it was a policy meant for deterrence. So somebody thought this was a good idea. Somebody thought it up, and they thought it was a good idea. So we can't whitewash that away, one. Two, there has been information that has come out. My colleagues have pointed out that that information has been the result of lawsuits that have come forward, not oversight and hearings. Three, there have been unifications. I met with a woman in Boston after, yes, I went down to El Paso, Texas with some colleagues, and I was denied entry. I met with a woman who presented herself at the border for asylum in Santa Teresa. She was separated from her child. Her claim was investigated. She was found to have a credible claim for asylum because of domestic violence back in Brazil. She was released. Her boy was not. They found out where her child was through a Facebook page. That child, after weeks and another lawsuit, was finally released by ORR to Mom's Arms because of another lawsuit. So let's be clear here about what is the driving force around the reunification of these kids. It clearly is not Congress. To that end, a journalist just posted on social media that she asked HHS and ICE officials about info on a child under 5 in government custody who was separated from their parent over a year ago. And authorities believe that both parent and child might be a U.S. citizen. Silence from administration officials. I'm not sure if this is right. She's not sure if this is right. But it is reason to ask questions and have some oversight as to what these policies are, because clearly this policy was put in place before anybody ever thought for a second about how to reunify a family, because they're making it up on the fly. And for those of you that believe that comprehensive immigration reform is an issue and that we should be working on it, I wholeheartedly agree. Next time you want to try to do it, maybe you shouldn't try to do it inside a Republican caucus room. Maybe invite us to the table. Maybe acknowledge the fact that in 2013, there was a veto-proof majority, Democrats and Republicans, that came out with an immigration bill out of the U.S. Senate, and we couldn't get a vote on it on the floor in this chamber. So let's be clear about what the driving issue on this policy is. Let's be clear, if we want to actually separate it, a border wall isn't going to stop people fleeing destitution and poverty and gang violence from coming to our country. When I was down on the border, I met with a person who runs a shelter who had been in contact with a grandmother from Guatemala who had fled to the border with her grandchild because her husband had been taken out of their home, had both of his legs cut off by a machete, and his body riddled with bullets. Her child and her child's spouse and their 3 kids were burned alive in a home. So she picked up a granddaughter and fled to our border. You're not going to solve that grandmother from fleeing with a grandchild because you build a border wall. You're going to solve it because you actually take these issues seriously, you see the humanity in people that are fleeing that violence, and you try to address those concerns in Guatemala, in Honduras, in El Salvador, in Mexico. And you know what the response of this administration has been? According to CRS, they've cut aid to Latin America by 20%. So let's be very clear about how you actually try to solve this problem. Tearing babies from parents' arms ain't going to do it. Building a border wall ain't going to do it. Cutting aid to these countries ain't going to do it. You want to actually solve the problem? I'm all in. But don't hide behind obfuscation and court orders and hearings to then say that we're actually trying to solve this when this is an issue that has stressed Democratic administrations and Republican ones. This is a complex issue. I have traveled with my Republican colleagues down to Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador on a Republican-sponsored CODEL. These are hard issues, but let's address them like this Congress should and not try to hide behind a policy that we're now trying to say wasn't put in place in the first place. Yield back.